Hey, the scriptures declare that when the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? We've seen a lot of our national foundations destroyed, especially in our understanding of the role of government, the scope of government, the sacred trust that government has in stewarding what does not belong to them. It belongs to the American people. That means they're going to treat it as if it's not their own. They're going to treat it as a sacred trust. And when that happens, we're blessed as a nation, and government stays small and lean and efficient. And that's exactly what we're seeing our president trying to do right now, is to restore that sacred trust and to understand that our resources do not belong to Washington bureaucrats. We're going to talk about this important concept of stewardship in our podcast today. I think you're going to find it real helpful.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
So glad you guys are with us today. It's a treat to have you. And, you know, we joked around last week. I was calling out all of our official fan club members, you know, and I got you, me, I got Sam, I got Dave, got my mom. We're working on your mom, and we had a little fun with that. But I had some people come out of the closet this week, and they publicly identified as official listeners. Right. Want to thank Melissa. Want to thank who else I want to thank? Anyway, I got hit with a bunch of people.
You know what that means?
Sunday.
It means that we got to start producing some merch.
Yeah, we're working on that. Yeah. We got other fish to fry.
Yes. Yeah.
No, but anyway, we do appreciate everybody giving us your feedback. Oh, I met a wonderful lady named Gail on Sunday who was just in tears as she expressed her gratitude for finding her home. She says she's been praying for a place like ours. She listens. She says she's been enjoying the online streaming, but also listening to our podcast every week. And she said, "I'm home. I'm home." And so I gave her a big welcome home on Sunday. Nice. But those are always great moments. So anyway, so much we can talk about. Let me talk about one of my favorite things, because I can't believe this hasn't happened earlier. Mm-hmm. You know, being the big MSNBC fans that I know you and I both are, the Joy Reid show. Fired. Mm-hmm. The end. Again, I'm not trying to pick on Joy, but I have never seen a person who is so angry and so just, I don't know, everything's about race and so full of hate. And I try to watch her show, and I'm just like, wow, you know, that lady needs some help. I don't know how she lasted as long as she did, but when MSNBC says you're toxic and you got to, you know, get off the airwaves because your product is no longer digestible, you know, then you've reached an all-time low. So anyway, I'd like to see the whole network go out of business, but that was my early Christmas present right there. I don't know. Did you ever tune into her or listen to her at all?
No, my exposure is only, you know, I don't practice self-torture, whatever you want to call it.
I didn't intentionally watch. It was just a clip here, a clip there.
Only a clip here and pop up on my feed. But, you know, you and I were talking about, you know, like she wasn't canceled. Canceled is when someone is saying really meaningful things and some authoritarian group came and kind of cut you off. I think at some point they finally realized, you know what, this is not bring the ratings down. And you know, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I think MSNBC as well as CNN have gone to like a bloodbath in ratings. So this is partially their way to salvage this. We'll see if it happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know about you, but I just, you know, obviously we're a kingdom people, kingdom church. We love red and yellow, black and white. They're all precious in the Lord's sight, you know, to go back to that little children's song. So it's not the issue. It's never been about color. I so appreciate President Trump going back to meritocracy and kind of trying to root out these systems that are fundamentally racist. So I get tired when every time, you know, there's an issue, a cultural issue, the root cause of whatever the problem is always racism. Like, why did Kamala Harris not get elected as president? I saw an entire Democratic panel basically saying that it was misogyny and racism. So it was men hating her because she's a woman, and not only that, she's a black woman. You know, So it's like, seriously, it's like insulting to everybody who voted a different way, or everybody, including black Americans, who felt like, no, it has nothing to do with the color of her skin. It has to do with her lack of ability, you know. It's just, I get tired of it. We've heard this now for 8 years, you know, the big race card played every time somebody doesn't like what's happening. And I think even black America's sick and tired of it, because it's demeaning to them. It's basically saying that you're being held back simply by the color of your skin. And it's just not true. I mean, we elected a black president for 2 terms here in America. And to say, again, that somehow Americans are inherently racist, or white people are inherently racist, gets just really old after a while. So I think nobody's buying it. Nobody's watching it. If that's the only thing you got, you better get something new, because people are sick of it. And I don't think it's playing out in real life either. So
I realized one thing a while ago. I heard this really, really powerful teaching on communication. They say, basically, whoever can say the most with the least amount of words win. In other words, conciseness, clarity, and communication in the political race. You know, yep. Barack Obama, whatever you feel about it, was a very effective communicator.
Yep.
Trump kind of is all over the place, but he leverages X.
He connects. Some of it's not just what you say; it's how you say it.
How you say it. But his tweets or whatever connect. There is a very potent message. Then you listen to Harris talk about some very general topic, and she goes around and around and around. When I saw those clips, I just realized, I think everyone intuitively understand, like, this person is not going to bring that level of excellence that we need because of how she communicates. That by itself, for me, is a disqualifier, because when I'm looking to hire someone and looking to promote someone, in many ways I'm looking at how they communicate, how their brain processes things. If they're going around and around, they're not concise, they're not clear, people lose focus. And that is probably the thing of the 2024 right. elections, is lack of focus. She's right. all over the place.
Right.
Like, what is your point? What is your message? I don't think she knows.
Right. Yeah, and so we got to get beyond just the simple, talk about oversimplicity. The oversimplicity is, well, it's because of X. Everything's because of X. The whole world's X. And it's like, no, life is more complicated and nuanced, and everybody is not racist. Some people are racist, but it doesn't matter what color you are. You can be racist. You don't have to be a white person just to be racist. You can be any color skin and be racist. Well, so I just get tired again with that simple race card being thrown all the time. We have so many situations, so many opportunities, so many examples of people of all different colors that are finding the American dream and working hard and being excellent at what they do and getting to the top of their field, and that's the way it should be. So
yeah, and in the day, people are saying, I want someone who's going to keep our country safe and help my economy do okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the major issues, and whatever color they are, they're going to support me in those 2 areas.
Well, and when you actually empower people, right, and you encourage people to govern themselves, and I think if there's an overarching theme from our podcast today, it would be the whole theme of accountability, stewardship, stewarding what God has given us. It used to be in the American way of things, you governed yourself, and you wanted external governments to be small and benign, in other words, not cancerous. Cancer has a way of taking over everything, right? And it ends up killing whatever is the host. And so we always wanted our government to be small, and we wanted people to have the freedom to live their lives and to start businesses and to do whatever it is God's called them to do. What we've seen happen in America is the government's gotten bigger and bigger, more bloated. And of course, the bigger government gets, the more resources it needs to stay alive and to float. And after a while, it becomes oppressive, so that people are just sending their money off to various government agencies. I wish we had to actually write our check to the state of Indiana, write a check to pay for taxes to the federal government, because I think if people saw how much the government, I'll use this word, is stealing from us. And I think we're seeing this played out with Doge and with all this happening to expose the waste and fraud and abuse in America. I think if we had to do that sooner, we would be all disgusted with, and we would all want more accountability, because we're working very, very hard to try to live our version of the American dream, and finding that it's becoming more and more difficult. So let's talk a little bit about all of that, because I saw Elon at I believe it was CPAC. He was presented with a chainsaw, and much to the hatred of everybody on the left. And again, sometimes I think people just don't have a sense of humor. Yeah. It's like, it's symbolic, you know. He's not running around with a chainsaw. He's not a chainsaw massacre person. It's symbolic of the incredible cutting of waste and fraud and abuse. And I think we just need to, this goes without saying, but let's just say it anyway. The amount of money that our government agencies have been wasting should cause us to be irate, not with Elon, but with the agencies themselves.
Yeah. I can't speak to Mr. Musk's personal life, but his approach to different businesses has been, he's a tremendous disruptor. He comes in and he just says, every time you say, well, it's always done it this way, he says, why? Why? That's why he's been so successful. I mean, there is a known archetype of the disruptor, and I think of all the people I know, he will be that disruptor. He comes in, and what does a disruptor figuratively does?
Yeah.
He comes in with a chainsaw and just cut things apart. You know, when he took over X or Twitter back then, the first day he brought a sink. He says, let this sink in. He's all about symbolism. But he totally revamped that whole company.
I remember, and made it more profitable.
It was profitable now. It's more influential than ever. He connected the AI. I mean, all these different things he does to it. And if you think from a governmental agency, I mean, for decades, it's been done this way. Why do we have to pass this pork bill that has a million things attached instead of line item? Well, it's always done this way. United States government is, to me, the prototype. The singularity of it's always been done this way.
Sure.
And when you have the unstoppable force and Elon Musk meeting the unmovable object, United States government, what you have is collision right now.
Oh yeah.
So
and as some of these things are being exposed, especially with our politicians, where they're sending grants to basically shell companies that, you know, I saw one company that it was the gal Stacey Abrams from Georgia. She formed an organization that had $100 in revenue the year before, and then got a $200 million grant. Now think about that, $100, and then so they were talking about a nothing organization. That's probably what it took to open the bank account, was $100. But now gets fueled all of this money, and that money is not going to its intended purpose. And even if it had a good intended purpose, you have to question, why did this person get $200 million, right? I mean, this is like crazy, crazy money. And what we're finding is a lot of these folks, this is going in their accounts, it's going for themselves or using it on themselves. It is an absolute atrocious, heinous crime against the American people. But we have to get back to this understanding again of what it means to steward money, and we have to ask the question, would you do this if this were your personal money? And I want to give a good example here. We talked about this. Let me get back to my picture here. This was James Fishback. A CNN interviewer said Doge shouldn't have defunded a taxpayer-funded Sesame Street show in Iraq that was designed to stop terrorism. So first of all, somebody in some bureaucracy somewhere thought it was a good idea to send millions and millions of dollars to create a Sesame Street type program in Iraq, to which Mr. Fishback says, there was a terrorist attack last month that killed 40 people. Big Bird and Elmo clearly aren't helping. If you want to stop terrorism, kill the terrorists. To which I sit and just give a loud laugh when I first read that, because your point being, and you work with business leaders all the time, if that money were your money to spend, would you spend it on something as absolutely ridiculously stupid and simplistic as that? In other words, would you be sending millions and millions of taxpayer dollars to do something like that? If it were your own and if it was a private situation, would you spend the money the same way?
Right. And we understand that behind the ideology, I mean, what they're trying to go for is the ideology to start targeting young people to try to, you know, communicate a Western value. I'm sure the think tank behind that came up with those different values. But again, the standard I would use to judge whether we should spend this money is not when there's a crazy abundance. There's a difference whether you want to have a Netflix subscription when you are, you know, totally in the black. Sure, spend money on whatever luxury.
Right.
Who am I to judge? But when you bring me into a situation, if I was an auditor and I come in and you are deep, deep red in debt, and you're like, well, we always, every Friday night we go out and get pizza. I'm like, you're not going to get pizza anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's a luxury. And you don't have luxury for that. And so when we see stuff like that, it's kind of like, it's tone deaf because it's saying, oh, well, that's just what we do. And we always have done this. It's a good idea. It's only this much money. What's the big deal? It's like, but you are crazy in debt. And if this was your money, this is not some government entity.
And we're talking here about the American government that's
Right.
trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, to the tune that every single American citizen is in debt $100,000.
Well, at some point, it becomes a death spiral in which the revenue doesn't keep up with the interest. So we're reaching that tipping point. So when we're in that desperate situation, which already it's immoral that we're doing this to our kids and so forth, or just even to our older selves. But then we bring the whole concept of stewardship. When someone says, hey, you have $1,000 budget, I get a budget at Livingstone's for whatever ministry. Like, what is the moral thing to do? It's like, well, it's the church's money. It's a faceless tithe money. Do I just go in and spend whatever it is? Or do I say, I'm going to treat it as if it's my own $1,000?
Right. Well, you bring up a good point because, and I think it's important for our listeners. When I think of the local church, and I think our church is funded by people's tithes and offerings that they give to the Lord. We have to steward that money, and the moment you stop looking at that money as being something very holy and precious and something that's not yours in the sense that you're a steward of it, you need to treat it and own it in the sense that you want to steward it incredibly well. But at the end of the day, there's like a holy fear of God that should grip our hearts when we're using something that's not ours. Now, in the church is at a heightened point because it's the Lord's, but there should be that sense of fear of God among public servants that the resources that they're using and stewarding are not theirs. Well, they're the American people.
I will argue, if I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, I could be in the IRS, I could be in whatever. It's still God's. It doesn't matter if it's a church or government. This is because the concept
it's not yours.
It's not mine.
It's not yours.
And ultimately, everything belongs to the Lord anyways. But the concept of stewardship, it's honoring God when you think about it this way. I mean, when I was in a school corporation, I got a tiny budget to buy different things. I'm not just buying whatever. I'm not maxing out my account. Right. I'm like, do I actually have to need this? I need paper. Yes, I'm going to go buy paper.
And in certain institutions, I don't know if it was that way in public education, but if you got a $10,000 budget for this year and you are very good and you steward it and you only use half of it, next year, your budget might get cut.
Yeah, because you're saying you only need half.
So the mentality is spend, spend, spend because we need more. We want to get more. We don't want to get less. Now, back to this issue of personal versus government, all right, big government. When I'm making a choice on whether or not I'm going to purchase something, there's usually two factors involved. Number one is quality, right? You don't want to buy a piece of garbage. You care about the quality of it, whether it's a piece of clothing, a car, or whatever it is, furniture. Number two is cost. So you're looking for the best possible quality at the most affordable cost. It might be what your budget can afford, or it might be just a good value. You're willing to pay more for something that is really great quality. What's ironic about tax dollars and the federal government, or any government for that matter, is do they care about quality? Usually not. Do they care about cost? Usually not. And so what you get is low quality, high cost. And I think a perfect example of this is another department that is under the auspices of DOGE, at least looking at how to cut waste, and that's the Department of Education. Since this was founded, I believe, in 1979, Jimmy Carter, it has cost the American taxpayers a ton of money, so costs have been outrageous, but quality in terms of what is it produced, and I think Mr. Trump has pointed this out. We now have the most expensive educational system in the world that's producing the lowest output in terms of educational excellence. So we have high costs, low quality. This is what happens every time governments get involved in anything that matters. Look at the United States Postal Service, which again is, from a business perspective, is a total, epic, colossal failure. It's bleeding, and keeps asking for more resources to stay afloat because it's not operated properly.
So, in general, the principle of stewardship gets weaker and weaker when there's more and more layers in between, right? If I told
Absolutely.
my son, I said, here's $10, take good care of it, he might take good care of it. But if he gave it to the $10 to his buddy, who then gave it to his uncle, who then gave it to his cousin, and then they say, hey, that's Andrew's $10, take good care of it. The cousin, uncle, friend, whatever, it's like, I don't even know who Andrew is. I'm not going to take good care of it, right?
Exactly.
So that's why on the state and the local level, there's a better chance, in my opinion,
Right.
of better stewardship.
Because the money stays closer to its source.
Greater accountability. There's a better sense. This money belongs to my neighbor. This is my neighbor who are contributing this. On the federal level.
And our taxpayers are going here locally. What are our biggest needs, and how do we meet those needs in the most effective, efficient, cost-effective manner?
Yeah.
That just makes sense.
Yeah.
And you bring that all the way back to down to your home. I only have this much money. What are my priorities for the needs that are facing our family right now, and how am I going to spend that money? And like you said, you would not go out if you were a good steward and waste that on frivolous things like some entertainment choice or vacation choice if you needed a new roof.
Yeah.
You would prioritize the roof, even though it's not as fun or whatever, but you would realize that is a greater priority. So these are the issues that we're talking about. If the foundations, the Bible says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Well, we're recovering a lot of foundational principles in American government, in American understanding of the way things should be in terms of running a nation, of who the money belongs to. This argument about Sesame Street got to be very interesting because it was basically the CNN host challenging this gentleman about this notion of sending a $5,000 check back to the American people. And he started, the CNN host started rambling on, we're all this much in debt, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, now you have a liberal who seems to be concerned about balanced budgets or spending, which is a joke because the Mr. Fishback responded and he said, what about the $350 billion that's completely unaccountable that was sent to the Ukraine? What about all this money that's been spent putting illegals in high-priced luxury hotels in New York and other urban areas, all on the taxpayer dime? You're worried about sending $5,000 of the American people's own money back to them as if somehow it's, number one, it's not theirs, and number two, they shouldn't be able to have it in the first place. Now he's arguing this needs to be going to pay down the deficit. And no doubt we need to start paying down the deficit, but $5,000 is not going to make a humongous difference right now in our deficit, but it makes a big difference, and it makes a powerful statement to the American people that we're aware that this is their money and we're doing everything we can to get rid of the waste and the fraud. The other thing, in addition to going back to local, which is a biblical principle, the other issue is corruption. When you have a lot of layers in between the money and where the money is spent, and someone's got their hand out every step of the way, in other words, that money's costing you more and more and more by the time it finally gets to its destination, you're going to have, terrible, terrible outcomes, and that's exactly what we're seeing as well. The corruption that's being exposed is just unbelievable, and I hope it results in some prison sentences. Some of these people should go to jail. If you and I did this, if I was embezzling church funds, God forbid, right? If a pastor were embezzling church funds and that was exposed, they should go to jail, period. And that does happen in America when that's exposed. People get exposed for corruption, they go to jail. But somehow at the most elite level, at the power brokers of our nation, they get away with this over and over again, whether it's insider trading or whether it's these shell companies like we saw with the Biden crime family, which I hope there's justice there, the Russian collusion hoax and all that Hillary Clinton did and all the canceled emails and all this stuff that's illegal. In fact, I just saw it right now in the, I think it's the Department of Education. They have a separate private line in which they're all communicating and they're all working to resist what the president is trying to do, which is in itself illegal because all that communication by law, since it's government business, has to be public access communication. So they're breaking the law right now. Yeah. And these folks should absolutely be fired at the bare minimum or go to jail for what they've done, or else there's no law in the land. Everything's lawlessness, and when you have an atmosphere like that, nobody fears the law and nobody cares about doing what's right.
Well, that's what the bureaucracy versus the democracy, right? The bureaucracy has a sense of entitlement. Says, "Hey, we've been here longer. We're here to persist the president. The president comes and go, but we're here forever." Right. And the bureaucracy's gotten so big that is really hard to remove them because you don't even know they exist.
Right.
You know. And
so let's talk about that. We're on accountability.
Sure.
What did you think about the president's directive through Elon Musk? I want to make sure that we understand that Mr. Musk is working at the president's request. He's not out from under authority or doing anything illegal or unconstitutional. And so he simply said, look, if you're a federal worker, I need you to respond via email. They all have their federal email accounts anyway. And I need you to respond by such and such time. I think he gave them, 2 weeks or something like that, a month?
48 hours.
Well, recently it's down to 48 hours. And he simply had a basic request. Please list, what was it, the top 4 or 5 things?
5 things you accomplished this week, yeah.
Okay. Now, what do you think about that? Is that being so demanding? Would you revolt?
No, so it's interesting because in the private sector, I just help a couple business do this, is create a survey, a weekly survey, to help the employee and their manager realize where they're at. So there's a metric, there's a scoreboard to help people on a weekly basis to know that am I doing well? I'm getting some. I'm not. What happens a lot of times, like you don't get a feedback till 6 months or 1 year in, and then when you meet for your yearly review, you're like, you did a terrible job, you're fired. Well, that's not fair for anyone involved. That's not good for anybody. First of all, we waste a year of productivity. Second of all, this guy's blindsided because he doesn't even know he's doing good or bad. That's why having these weekly checkpoints review grows productivity. Now, the private sector understands this,
right?
But somehow, in the context of the governmental work, it seems like this huge intrusion. Now, I understand some of the good people who are showing up to work, who are working hard, might be a little confused because they have different managers they report to. But I like to remind them that the directive coming from the boss of all boss, which is Donald Trump himself, who then also reports to the true boss, which is the American people.
Right.
And that level of accountability is a very, very, in my opinion, a very basic thing that anyone can. And guess what? If you can't report 5 things,
I was going to ask you. You serve the American people at Livingstone's church. This is your church family. If I asked you, hey, by tomorrow, could you list 5 major stones, right, that you're working on? What are 5 big areas?
5 rocks I'm working on this quarter. 5,
and we've talked about this, for instance, just so our people know, when we have our weekly meeting, we talk about what in each of our areas, what our major rocks
major
are.
Priorities. We have a metric we review to make sure that we are on track doing the things we're supposed to do. We have a systematic accountability process in place so that we're going somewhere. We're being accountable of the finance and the time that we're
face to face.
We hold each other accountable.
So you do have to come in to work and all this kind of stuff. So number one, it's not unfair that you would expect an employee working for the American people to show up at an office wherever they work and to do their job. Number two, it is not unreasonable that you would ask them to tell what they are doing. And the whole point was this: who knows how many people are employees that don't even exist, just like we found on the what's the word I'm looking for? Social Security rolls, right? Yeah. So number one, he's trying to filter out who's a fake employee that somebody is just stealing money. Number two, who doesn't even check their email anymore because they don't do any work. They just stay at home and get paid by the taxpayers. So who's not even looking at their email? Number three, is anybody even doing any work? And if you're not doing any work, why are you an employee? Why are we paying for your life, right? So, I mean, but again, the common person, it cracks me up. The Democrats always say they're for the working person. What a joke. we're actually for people to do work, right? That's what we're for the working person. Like working is an important word. You're working. We just saw again the pipeline that was opened up. No one's talking about when Biden came in and on day one cut the pipeline and all those people Keystone Pipeline. All those people lost their jobs. Nobody seemed to care about the workers then. I mean, are you kidding me? And what does Trump do in the very first day? Open it right back up, and all those people.
How about all the people lost their job over COVID, over the vaccine? No one cared about their jobs back then. So
frontline heroes until
selectively caring, right?
And the selective care, unfortunately, goes back, follow the gravy train. It's all going back to the federal government tax-funded gravy train that we are seeing exposed right now. And so, again, I get tired of these folks that are just so naive. Trump was referred to as the king. Sometimes people, you need to lighten up. There's so much he does that is his sense of humor. To suggest somehow that exposing waste, fraud, and abuse is fascist or makes him a dictator, again, is just a stupid liberal progressive talking point. It makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, the man could be doing 1,000 other things with his life rather than trying to expose waste, fraud, and abuse.
Well, yeah, I'd rather have the guy who's telling me exactly what he's going to cut and do it in a maybe not in the nicest way, in the subtle way, than someone who's going to sugarcoat me, promise the world to me, and meanwhile grow the bureaucracy and robbing me blind through inflation, which is also a different form of tax, and actually taxing us, right? And so again, this is a very superficial way to look at it. I don't know what king or what tyrant is actually trying to cut the government, cut expenses.
Right. He's not bringing more power to himself. He's not centralizing power. He's actually shrinking the scope of federal government and holding it accountable.
DOE, whatever you feel about, but the statement is to say, hey, the DOE, let's send the power back to the states. Isn't that something that typically your liberals want that? Decentral, the opposite of fascism, right? Education, I don't want to control it. Let the states control it. How is that tyrannical,
Well, it's not when the shoe's on the other foot, and we saw that for 8 years. We saw a whole host of things that President Biden did that this court struck down and called unconstitutional, but he didn't care. He did it, tried to push it through anyway, magically canceling student debt. So basically sticking the taxpayers with billions and billions of dollars of bills, stuff like that we somehow forget. Or, it's interesting on that side, as long as it's a oligarchy of power, not just one person, not just a superpower fascist person, but the elite class has no problem spreading the wealth around. It's not their wealth, it's our wealth, but they have no problem spreading it around. And nobody screams fascism or tyranny except us conservatives when that's happening on the left. But when it's exposed, now all of a sudden somehow it's a threat to democracy, and we hear all this ridiculous nonsense, which just gets to be old. So I love this, though. When we're looking at the public's perception of what's taking place right now, our president is receiving glowing reviews. His actions are incredibly popular, and I think the American people get it. This guy is fighting for us. This guy is making some really great choices to help us in the long run. Sorry about that. And the people get it. I think we're bypassing a lot of the legacy media. People are not watching. They're not tuning in anymore. They're getting their information from other sources. And I think it bodes well, because we're finally getting out of the Beltway echo chamber where we think everybody is a rabid progressive leftist. And the fact of the matter is we're not. And America is not. And I think we're finally being able to reject all of that ideology. So
I think Rasmussen report the highest right track, wrong track, the right track survey, which I think is 48% in a long time, which is interesting because 48% being so high. Yeah. That shows that most Americans just recognize that, this debt thing is not good.
No. Yeah. And I hope they do, because you just can't continue on like this without it bringing a heap of hurt to all of us.
And guess what? If America goes down economically, there's nowhere to escape. There's not like some random other countries like, oh, unaffected by American
Right.
economy.
Right.
Good luck with that.
No, you're right.
The whole world will be affected.
It sends ripple effects that would be just absolutely tragic. So,
Yeah.
This is really, really good. You know, just the whole biblical principle of stewarding, taking care, managing what God has blessed us with as individuals, stewarding tax dollars with a sense of holiness about us, that the money does not belong to us, so let's get the best quality at the best cost for the American people. These are concepts that have fallen away for years and years and years. Praise God, they're being restored right now. And we didn't have time to get into this, but it was just refreshing to hear J.D. Vance talking about faith and family motivating this administration, and got very personal about marriage, about children, and about his faith in Jesus Christ, and not in the moral teaching only that Jesus was a good moral person, but he went right down and talked about the cross and Jesus as Savior and Lord. And it was just refreshing to hear the Vice President of the United States being very open about what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ, and expressing a lot of the values that we know are foundational to the health of any nation, which is marriage and healthy families. You know, healthy marriages, healthy families, which is what we preach a lot around here at Livingston.
Is that your pick for 2028? You don't have to commit right now.
Well, no. I mean, I'll tell you what. I shared last podcast. I am incredibly impressed with who he is as an orator, as a statesman, his courage, his clarity, as you pointed out earlier. He does it in a way that is clear but not obnoxious. He's not abrasive, but he's sharp. And I guess to answer your question, yeah, I think he'd be my front runner right now. And I think at CPAC, I think he came out as the front runner there too.
Over Steve Bannon, who's just like, how's Steve Bannon even get on the list? That's my question.
Yeah, no,
I like him, but
I
it's
would
not.
think Ron DeSantis or some of those folks would certainly be.
But the thing about J.D. Vance is he has tech background, which is really, really, it's just bizarre. Because normally with that kind of, where his is, but he has so he's a sharp guy.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Well, thanks for being with us today. Our empire continues to grow. We know we're picking you guys up one or two at a time, and it does my heart good. But
when we hit the 7 fan mark, that's when we get merch? Is that how this works?
Well, hey, Matthew, our producer, pointed out that I think when we hit May, we're hitting the 250th episode, which that deserves something. Yeah. We need to think about how to celebrate that.
Let's get Donald Trump on our podcast.
All right, we're going to see if we can get the president on our podcast or the vice president.
Just JD. We'll take JD.
Or Elon. Maybe we'll get Elon and get a ratings boost. But anyway, until we meet again, we'll see you guys next Thursday.